will be able to join us tonight. She's got that one job she was on last week. She's doing it again this week, so she won't be here. So I get to do this all by my lonesome tonight. So we'll go ahead and get started. There's only a couple of people, and that's just fine with me, because as long as one person's here, I'm going to teach that one person. So we'll just jump right into it. We're going to be talking about the foundation. That's pages 37 through 44. And this is one of those big, heavy chapters, like Lauren likes to say. It's one of those that has lots and lots of information and not really a whole lot of pages. So I'm broken it down into just 7 pages for tonight. And the first question I got, since there's you and I believe one other person here, Joanne, do you ever use a to-do list?
Do I list on yeah, I do a to-do list. I do.
How important would that have been the other night when you, or the other day when you forgot the sanitizer?
Oh my God. Yeah, it would have. And Wendy did say to me, you need to make a checklist, and I didn't. So, you know, that was on me.
See, that was a learning opportunity. You'll never ever forget that again. Go ahead, Mike. What'd you have to say?
We're just, we're so new to it. We are constantly working on lists and just trying to categorize the list.
Oh, absolutely. My list was always evolving. I mean, it still does to this day. There are things that, when I very first started, are so ingrained in my mind that I never forget them. But then if they're not on the list, I do forget them. So I had lists everywhere. And even though I knew, like at Burger King, I was at Burger King 16 years and I knew everything about Burger King. And I still would write a new list every time I went somewhere new. And it would have all the basic things, turn on the lights, open the safe, count the safe. And I would always just tape it down to my desk and refer to it. So you got to have that to-do list. That begins your foundation because it helps you to not forget things, for one, but then it also gives you a little bit of piece of security knowing that, hey, I've done everything that's on my list. So get in the habit of doing a to-do list. That is a good foundation. So this particular section starts out talking about a book that's called The E-Myth. And that was a book that was written in the late 90s, I believe. And it talks about the difference in the perspectives of working in a business as opposed to working on the business. A technician is what most of us are. And a technician is someone that works in the business. They do things with their hands. And certainly in our case, most food truck owners are the prep person or the cook, or they're a cashier, or they're doing something manual while the truck is in operation. That's working in the business. Working on the business is when you're doing things that help move the business as a unit forward. And there is distinct differences in those. So as I list here, a food truck entrepreneur looks at the business as the product. And what I want you to think about is, let's just take a hamburger. If you're doing a recipe for a hamburger, you're going to change the meat seasoning, let's say. You'll make it all up, make the sandwich, you'll take a bite and say, okay, that's not quite right. And you go tweak it. You have to look at your business, your overall business, the same way. If something's not working the way that you want it to work, you need to tweak it. It's not one of those where you just cross your fingers and hope tomorrow gets better. You have to actively be working on the business as a unit, because the business is the product. And ideally, we want to get you to have multiple products, multiple food trucks, and they all got to be identical. Just like that hamburger, or in Joanne's case, the hot dog, it needs to taste the same today as it does next week, as it does next month. If it doesn't, there's a problem. A food truck entrepreneur also is going to see the business as its own system. A system means that you're going to produce the same result day in and day out. And then a system can also be tweaked to improve the results. So you're looking at the business as a whole. It's not just, I got to cook fries today, or I got to prep meat today, or I got to cut onions. It's, what do those activities do for the business? So we talk about quality in food. The quality of the food is what brings people back. It's not necessarily that you are a food truck that brings people there. They'll come maybe one time, but they certainly won't come a second time if your food quality isn't where it needs to be. So the business is its own system. An entrepreneur has a vision of a well-defined future. You know what's going to be happening, and you're working towards that vision. So for example, if you decide that you're going to do, let's pick a big number. Let's say you're going to do $800,000 a year in sales. If you're going to do that number, you can't just wait to the end of the year to see if you did it. You have to be working towards that number every single day. You have a clear-cut vision of where I need to be. And then you're going to break that vision down into steps. How am I going to achieve that particular vision of whatever it is that you're looking to achieve with your business? You know, for most of us, we want sales, we want profitability. So that's what our vision is going to be as far as those hard things that we can achieve. But we have to break it down into steps. But we always know what that vision is. I want to do 800,000. I want to do 100,000 in profit this year. Whatever the vision is, the entrepreneur is working towards that. And the entrepreneur sees the food truck business in its entirety. So you see, everything here is relying back on you seeing the business as a whole unit. It's a product, it's its own system, has a well-defined future. You know what that business is going to do, and you see it as an entity, and an entire entity in and of itself. And you can tweak little bits of that entity, but it's, again, the product. A technician, and that's what most food truck owners are, they come in, they get ready to set up the food truck, and they're thinking what work has to be done to get us open, what work has to be done to survive lunch, what work has to be done to clean up. They see the business, they see the food truck, that's a place, that's where I go to work. They start from today, and they don't have a plan to improve the business. They might have some wishes. Man, I wish I could do 800,000. Man, I'd love to do 1 million, but they don't have a plan. They just sit and they hope. A technician also believes the future is modeled after the model of past experience, meaning that whatever's happened to them in the past is what's going to move them forward. So whatever they've done in the past, they've been a cook at McDonald's. They're going to continue to be a cook, even though they own a food truck. I love working with people that have past restaurant experience, but my biggest challenge with people that have past restaurant experience is breaking them of the habit of being an employee, because they worked for somebody else. You know, I worked for McDonald's, I worked for a taco place, I worked for a mom and pop place. I wasn't the one in charge, but when we get on the food truck, we fall back into those habits because the past and the present is what drives your future. Okay, well, I used to be a cook, so I'm going to continue to be a cook because that's what worked. But then who's taking care of the business? Because you're stuck in an employee's position. You're working with your hands to produce results rather than working with your mind to produce those results. And in a nutshell, that's what the E-Myth book was about. Entrepreneurs working on the business, and then the technicians who worked in the business. And there is a distinct difference. But there's one more element that you need as a business owner that wants to get a second truck, or even just wants to have a truck that you don't have to be on the entire time. I mean, can you imagine if you had a food truck that you could allow someone else to open it for you, someone else to close it for you, and all you did was stop in and check on them to make sure they were doing the job right? And then that truly becomes a business because you're not working on it. You're not creating your own paycheck. You're creating a business that pays you. So the element that's missing in order for you to get off the food truck is you got to find yourself a food truck leader. The e-book or the E-Myth book refers to that as the manager, someone that's going to do the mundane things. So a manager, a food truck leader, someone that you're going to put in charge of your food truck, they have to be focused on the results, and you're going to tell them what the results are. Today, I expect you to do $2,000 in sales. I expect your food cost to be a 25% food cost. I expect your labor percent to be a total of 25% of the sales today. I expect your waste to be at this. You're giving them things to work on. You're giving them specific results you expect them to achieve. When you find the right person, they thrive on giving you the results that you ask for, because that's how they're wired. And there's a lot of people out there that will give you exactly what you want. The problem is there's not a lot of owners and a lot of business people that know how to ask for what they want. So that food truck leader, that person's going to focus on results. They're going to handle the important, but the mundane tasks. They'll be the ones to place an order. You'll teach them how to do it so that they're not going over a budget, but they'll be the ones to do the food order, because that's a mundane task. You shouldn't have to do it. They'll be the ones to schedule the employees. You give them guidelines to schedule, and they have a goal on a labor percentage to hit, but they're the ones that do the mundane tasks so that you can have time to work on building your business and doing marketing activities and doing all the things in the community to help up your standing within the community as a business owner. You can't do that if you're having to write a schedule and walk around and do an inventory real quick while you're chopping onions. All of those are mundane tasks. They're important for sure, but somebody else can do them. A food truck leader or a really great manager, they crave order. They like systems. They like checklists. They like paperwork. They like recipes. They like the things that tell them what to do. And if they follow those things on the checklist, they get a result. And that result is something that motivates them. It gets them excited because they can see it. And they can say, here, Mr. Boss, we did these things here. Look at our results. And then the boss should be able to look at that checklist and go, awesome, you have done a great job. They feed on that kind of feedback. They love that kind of feedback. They crave order. Chaos is what chases these people away. There are a number of food truck owners that get lucky and hire somebody that has this ability, but because the food truck owner is not organized, is not focused on what needs to be done to get the business operating properly, they chase away these people that crave order because they don't like chaos. They don't like a boss that is bouncing from fire to fire. So you have this great person that you've hired and then you chase them away because you don't have the systems in place to encourage them to stay and to help to make your business a better place. So you've got to get these kind of things under control before you ever go out and seek that manager to run your truck for you, or the food truck leader to operate the truck while you're off of it. And then when you have that food truck leader that's properly trained and does all of these things I've been talking about, that frees up you as the owner to work on the business. Because you'll never be able to work on the business when you're doing tasks in the business. When you're the one that's cooking, when you're the one that's cashiering, when you're the one that's deep frying. And even if you take a wimpy job like expediting, expediting is a great place for a food truck leader to be because they can step away from that and the other people can fill in. If they have to handle a guest complaint, for instance, they can step away and go handle that. And the rest of the team picks up the slack. But that's not the place for the owner to be. If you want to get off the truck, you want to evolve into a second and a third and a fourth truck, you've got to have systems in place that free you up to do that, or you will always have what we talked about, the entrepreneur, or what we talked about, the technician. The past dictates their future. If your past has always been you're the one chopping onions, you'll continue to be the one chopping onions until you stop and start working on the business. Now we've got an improvement to-do list, and that's really the majority of the whole rest of the book is going into these three important things. The to-do list for improvement has to start with you. We talked a little bit last week about becoming a leader and some of the important things about being a leader. And I'm going to say something that a lot of people don't like hearing is right now you're likely just an employee on your own food truck. You might be highly paid, but you're still an employee. Because if you don't show up, the business doesn't operate. You have to become a successful leader before you can ever take that first step getting off the food truck. To become a successful leader, and I talked about this a little bit last week, there were a handful of things that a good leader does. But in order for you to be in charge, and it's not just be, I'm the owner, people follow leaders. They don't have to be millionaires. They don't have to be business owners. Some of the best people that I've worked with were not the owners of the company, but they understood what it took to be a leader, and I would follow them off a cliff. They were that good. And that's what you got to become. And you do that little bits at a time. You're going to have one employee that by default makes you a leader, but it doesn't make you a successful leader. It doesn't make you a good leader. When you have people that will call you up and ask you, hey, you got any job openings? I love working with you. Then you know you've achieved becoming a good leader, because people will follow you around. We're going to talk about how to improve the truck. Got a whole section on how to improve the truck, because before you can ever get off of it, the staff that's on the truck has to be able to handle all the work, plus whatever you currently do on the truck. They have to be able to do it without you. And the only way that they can do that is to have standards, policies, procedures, and systems. The standard tells them measurements, or it tells them times. It tells them what has to be done. And then a policy reinforces what happens if they don't do the things they're supposed to do. A procedure tells them how to do something, and then a system follows up. The neat thing about systems is they become your voice whenever you're off the truck. Because if you have a checklist system in place on how to close down the food truck, the person in charge should be making sure each employee is doing what's on that checklist. And then they become responsible for the results of that checklist. And that's where it, again, becomes important you find that food truck leader, because they thrive on results. They thrive on being able to show you, hey, boss, look what we did. They love that kind of thing. When you have somebody that's not able to do it, they're not going to be your leader, because they won't get excited by the systems, because, oh, another piece of paperwork. On today's podcast, if you were able to listen to it, I talked about somebody that was too bored in their job to do a temperature checklist. And I was pretty harsh on that particular person, because it was an irresponsible act what they did. But somebody made a worse mistake than that particular person made, because somebody hired them and put them in a position of responsibility that they should have never been in the first place. And then the last thing that we're going to work on improvement in the book is going to be the business. Because when you step off the food truck, obviously you're no longer doing any prep work or cooking or ringing up orders. Your role changes, and it changes tremendously. You see, inside the truck is comfortable. You know what you're doing inside the truck. You're probably the fastest at everything. When it comes to cooking, you know how to cook everything and not run out of food, and you know how to do it perfectly. The work is predictable. But when you step off the truck, you're in a whole different world. You got to be the one that is now figuring out where you're going to be parking the truck. You're going to be the one that's marketing the truck. You're going to be the one that's talking to other business people about your business, either to get funding or to get more opportunities to sell somewhere. It puts you in situations that you're not going to be comfortable. But when you're in situations where you're not comfortable, guess what happens? You grow. You can only grow when you are stretched. You can only improve when you go beyond what you normally do. So those are the things we'll be talking about over the next handful of weeks. You, the truck, and the business. And we'll get into a bunch of details. And these are details that if you just opened, They're going to work and work to your benefit. If you've been open 5 years, they're going to work and work to your benefit. Because the goal of the book is to get you off the truck. And if you want to open a second one, that's awesome. If all you want to do is just own one really well-ran food truck, then let's do that. But the best way to do it is for you to be off of it so that you can promote the business rather than worrying about where am I going to find another case of brisket this week. And here's a quote from Dave Thomas of Wendy's. It all comes back to the basics. Serve customers the best tasting food at good value in a clean, comfortable restaurant, and they'll keep coming back. Dave Thomas said that in one of his books, I think the first book that he wrote. And it is an interesting book to read because it pretty much reads the way Dave Thomas spoke in his commercials, very down home, very straight and to the point. He is exactly what those commercials embodied, if you can remember those Wendy's commercials. But he believed those things. Wendy's went through many changes over the years. When it started, way back when, in the late 60s, they only sold a handful of things. They sold hamburgers, they sold chili, they sold Frosties, they sold French fries, and they sold sodas. That was their menu, which is exactly what I tell you guys to do today. Get a small menu and do it well. Now, as the company grew and then it went public, that's when they started adding in all the nonsensical things that they did. Let's do chicken, and let's do a grilled chicken, and let's do a spicy chicken, and let's do a deep fried chicken. Chicken is chicken is chicken, and it all competes with each other. So I'm going to open it up for questions if you guys have any, and I'll open up the chat if you'd rather just type them. Yes, small menu and easy to execute. That's right. Somebody commented that from their iPhone, and I do appreciate that. Small menu, it's got to be small. It's got to be tiny. You guys know I work with food truck owners every single day. Usually I talk to at least 6 people a day about their business, and many of them are brand new. Hi, Christina. Sometimes it does show your all's name. I guess it depends on which account you log in from. But in any case, when I talk to those new owners, and one of the questions I always ask them is what's going to be on the menu? And then I start to write, and I'm writing and writing and writing. And I tell them you can't possibly store all that food. And then they go, oh no, I'm not going to store it all at once. I just want to rotate. And then we get into a whole nother problem. Then we get into a whole nother problem. The guests don't know what you're going to serve. Keep a menu, keep it small so you can serve it. So you can serve it quickly. You can be respectful of their time. And then have a stable core menu that people can come to count on you. If you want to put in a limited time only special, that's not a problem. But you can't change out your whole menu because you're bored as a chef. If you're bored as a chef, go get you a big restaurant. And then let people come to you because of your name. If you're going to run a food truck and be profitable, don't reinvent the wheel.